To discuss all this is Michael Kroger, former Victorian Liberal President, and also Steve Conroy, former Federal Labor Minister. Steve Conroy, what signal was sent by those weekend race protests? They were allowed to go ahead, almost nobody fined. The rest of us, though, banned from holding Anzac Day ceremonies, holding funerals of more than a few people, all that kind of stuff, visiting our parents or children beforehand. What signal does this send?
Look, I think the medical message was very clear, which was that all the medical advice was for it not to go ahead. But I have struggled today watching some of the commentary from people who have argued strongly that we should be allowed to have AFL and NRL crowds, which will be up to 20,000 in some stadiums around the country. Now, you can't have it both ways. You can't be critical that this rally went ahead and then in the same breath say it's time to get the crowds back to the AFL. I don't mind if you have a consistent position, but you can't have both positions.
No, I agree with you. I think some social distancing of the footy, 20,000 is less than, half the crowd that was in one of the rallies. I'm sure you should be able to manage to do it. It's more the hypocrisy of the politicians and the police, etc., and I might say some of the activists. But I want to switch to the Queen's Birthday Honours today, Michael Kroger. Our highest award went to former Prime Minister Tony Abbott. I want you, Michael, to hear how the ABC's flagship AM program announced this today.
Someone who likes this sort of thing is former Prime Minister Tony Abbott, who controversially reinstated knighthoods and made Prince Philip a Sir. He's just one of 3 people getting the country's very top honour, making him a companion of the Order of Australia. He didn't return AM's calls.
There you go, Michael. Tony Abbott's credentials all established in the fact that he made Prince Philip a knight. I mean, really.
Yeah, well, that was terrible. But what can you expect from the ABC? I think things have got worse under the ABC. By the way, since we've been in government. We've been in government for 7 years. That is when I say where I've seen the coalition. And I just think the standard of independence at the ABC is deteriorating further. And that was just a silly, terrible, snide comment against someone who's well deserving of this award, and not just for his political career, but for the extraordinary community service he's done and his support and friendship to the Aboriginal community. God, has there been a Prime Minister who's done more for the Aboriginal community than Tony Abbott, by the way?
Well, let's have a little argument here. I'm not sure we're all going to agree on this one. What stuns me about the Queen's Birthday Awards, they were given to 2 very abusive people. One is former broadcaster Mike Carlton, whose tweets honestly, so full of the most vile, abusive people, F words, C words. And it said things like this to a Jewish reader: "You're the one full of hate and bile, sunshine, the classic example of the Jewish bigot. Now, F off." I don't know, Steve, is this an appropriate winner of this great national honour?
Well, look, I take your point that there's a number of very bizarre awards. I mean, do you know they've actually given an award today to somebody who claims that China deliberately released the coronavirus on the world? Someone got an actual award and said that. Her name's Bronwyn, just in case you missed her contributions on Sky News. But, yeah, look, if people are going to be ruled out on the basis of a number of stupid things that they say, there probably nobody would get an award. So I think you've got to put the totality in there. And look, he's made a contribution. I live in Melbourne, so I don't get to hear Mike Carlton, or I don't even know if he's still on air. So I've never had to listen to him regularly or irregularly. So he's not someone. But if you were to say here's someone who's made a contribution to the media over many years, he would probably fit that category.
Gee, that's very...
I'm being generous. I mean,
it wasn't noted for generosity. China. It's often been said you were the most kind and gentle faction boss that the Victorian right ever had.
You're just getting Toey about Thursday night and Richmond Collingwood. You're just getting Toey.
Michael, please restore some, some reality to this debate. I mean, this is a saint over here.
Well, Mike Carlton, I don't think someone should get an award like that. I mean, if you you could take the view that those comments they made were anti-Semitic. And do we want people like that being acknowledged by the country for their services? Probably not. Marcia Langton got an award. Okay, well, that's on the borderline. But,
well, hang on.
quite frankly...
I want to hold you on that one. You mentioned Marcia Langton. Let me introduce her before I get back to it, because, yes, indeed, she was the other winner that surprised me, Aboriginal activist Marcia Langton, because she's called everyone from Tim Flannery, people on the left, to me in the middle, and who knows else, a racist. She said a gay supporter of Israel Folau probably just thinks he's gay because he masturbates too much. And she says that Australia is very racist, this country that's just honoured her. So racist, in fact, that today she claimed we actually needed to be told to stop killing Aborigines. Here she is.
No effort to retrain the police force to stop them from killing us. I would have thought it's pretty straightforward. Do not kill Aborigines. How hard is that?
Michael, how does a race baiter like that get one of the top Australian awards now?
Well, she says people should stop killing Aborigines. Well, Aboriginal men should stop killing Aboriginal women. And if Marcia Langton's get an award, why doesn't, and probably because she's been nominated by friends and supporters, the person who should be given an award is that young woman, Jacinta Price. What an absolute hero she is. What a woman, a young black woman, self-made, who has got enormous courage and is speaking the truth about what is going wrong in the Aboriginal community. We need practical, on-the-ground action, not these symbols that these professional demonstrators and the neo-fascists, some of whom were involved in these demonstrations, who break the law, the mob rule in Victoria as it does elsewhere. No, this young woman should be at the top of the list for an Australia Day award. I saw on Paul Murray last night. She's a hero, and I praise her courage. If the Australia Day honours if the Queen's Birthday honours want to honour anyone, she would be one person. What a woman she is.
Steve, but how do these things get handed out? I mean, it just seems to me...
That's a very good question, Andrew. And having sat in Cabinet and been part of a review process that put in place an allegedly independent process, which has come up with gems like we've seen in the last few days, you do have to shake your head.
No, but isn't that the problem, Steve? When they say an independent process, to me it seems it's like almost out of control. Like you then appoint a bunch of safe people who exclude people who've had the guts to stand against the mob, like Jacinta Price, right? She deserves it far more than Marcia Langton, who just goes with the mob and just whips it up. I mean, that's the problem. It's the lack of accountability. I would much prefer these awards to be handed out by politicians who then have to stand by them, and then maybe they also have a chance to redress the imbalance that we tend to see.
No, look, I think that's a very fair point. The independent process that existed previously, before we were in government, was reviewed to make it even more independent. And we've seen some of the controversial nominations over the last few years. But look, I mean, we've talked about 2, 3 or 4 tonight. There are many, many worthy Australians who have been awarded. And today's the day for them to celebrate. And by focusing on a couple like that we don't agree with, you potentially undermine the positive message from these awards to the hundreds and hundreds of Australians who absolutely deserve them.
I got your point. I get you. You make a very good point. The people who got it for public service, that unrewarded, that don't, absolutely, they deserve it. It's when these awards get political and when they ignore the abuse, the long record of abuse and vilification and disparaging of Australia, and they still get the award, I think that crosses a line.